All right, welcome back everybody to a brand new video here on the second channel, and today I'm going to be doing my meta predictions for the Pittsburgh Regional Championships. Pittsburgh is tomorrow, and I want to talk about what decks I think will do well. How are we going to see any trends carry over from the last two regionals we just had, Frankfurt and Monterey? The results there were definitely pretty interesting, and I think are shaking up the meta in quite a big way. So I'm excited to talk about all that in today's video. If y'all are new here to the second channel, make sure to subscribe down below. We're on the road to 26K subs. And yeah, let me know what you think of the meta predictions. What do you think is going to do well at Pittsburgh this weekend? I would be interested to hear down below. So, first things first, Gardevoir, the BDIF. I mean, yes, Gardevoir just won both regionals this past weekend. In fact, it was 3 of the finalist decks. So, like, clearly the deck is just broken right now. Now, Henry Chow cooked up this really good Guardy build with Triple Bravery Charm, 8 Psychic, 4 Vessel, just Turbo Guardy 2.0, just trying to be fast, consistent, and strong. There's no real, there's no tricks in the deck. There's no Flutter Me, no Jellicent, nothing like that. Just a straightforward Guardy list. And it was able to almost, I mean, it won both tournaments, right? So, like, this deck will probably be the most common way to play Gardevoir going into Pittsburgh. I wouldn't be surprised if this build is the one that is the most played. But the other Guardy variants are still out there, like the Riley, McKay, Devo, Flutter build. It still fine. The Devo Flutter does help a lot against Goldengo, which, you know, the Goldengo is, you know, it's a shaky matchup for Guardy. Even like the new build here, Henry Chow has probably is unfavored against Goldengo. But when you have the Flutter Devo, the matchup becomes a little bit more close. And obviously, Devo is just a very good card in other matchups. And then the Jellicent Guardy is the other build that might see a bit of play this upcoming weekend. This deck definitely has a better matchup into Goldengo than the other Guardy variants, but it does kind of suffer from, like, Jellicent being kind of a mid-card in a lot of other situations. It is good in a Dango, and you are giving yourself a better matchup in a Dango, but then you're kind of crippling your Guardy deck a little bit. I think that's, like, the general consensus that the Jellicent is not as strong as the other variants because it's a bit more clunkier. There's a little bit more going on, as opposed to just playing like a Drifloon or a Fluttermane, like a basic Pokemon you can easily find with Artisan, where this build is a little bit more clunky and harder to get going. But you do, like I said, have a better Dengo matchup. I don't think Dengo is playing 4 boss right now. If everyone's playing the Piper build, like, they're not playing 4 boss, they could be playing Django, which I'm sure Django could be a little challenging, but I do think this is better in a Goldengo. If you want to take a better Dengo matchup, Jelly Guardy might be the better one to play, but I would expect the most common Guardy list this weekend in Pittsburgh to be the Henry Chow build. I mean, just being able to win 2 tournaments, like, there's no way people aren't just like, oh, this deck's broken, let me just sleeve it up instead of playing the other variants. Dragapult is still pretty high up in the stock ranking, though, of course. Poltnor, probably the most common way the deck will be played because it gives you a better matchup spread. And Dusknoir just does crazy things with Budu. This deck is good. I don't know if the Tord build will be as common, though. I know Tord is a very popular player and people will want to play his deck, but I think the Jamming Tower build will still be the more common way the deck is played, because Jamming Tower is just a lot better in a Guardy, especially now that the triple Bravery Charm build is popping up. It's also a lot better into Goldengo, which is still going to be a pretty big deck to beat this weekend. So, I mean, Dragapult will still be very popular and common, but I just don't think it'll be as, I don't know. It'll be good. We'll see how well it does, but I think the Jamming Tower build will be the most, like, the big way it's going to be played over the Tord build. I mean, the Tord build might still do well, but I think the Jamming Towers will definitely be big. Straight pull, still interesting. I got the Kato Arai build here pulled up. There's a lot of cool tricks this deck does have with the Cornerstone, the Dusclops, the Maractus, but Straight pull is a little bit more awkward. Also, its matchup at a Guardy isn't very good, which is kind of the issue with this deck, but it's still, like, a decent deck overall. Again, you're taking a bit of a weaker Guardy matchup than the Dustbolt build. I mean, both builds are obviously not great in a Guardy, but, like, Dustbolt at least gives you a fighting chance, but this build's a bit worse into it, but you do have a better, maybe, general matchup spread with what you can do. You're a little bit better in a Goldengo with how your deck is built, but I don't expect Straight Pull to be, like, the biggest deck this weekend. I mean, if my opponent's playing Dragapult this weekend, I'm fully expecting it to be just Dusknoir Dragapult. Goldengo is obviously next up. I think the most common way it's going to be played is with Togekiss. I know we have been seeing different builds like Dusknoir. There's that Rev of Room Secret Box build that got top 8 at Frankfurt, but the most common way the deck will be played is probably with the Togekiss because it's just really, really good. Also, Togekiss is really nice against something like Terrabox. If you actually get to set up versus Terrabox, you can get a lot of value out of your Togekiss. It makes that matchup a little bit more winnable. I think the Togekiss is still really good. It is obviously a little bit more luck reliant. Like, you're going to lose games because you just don't flip heads at all when you need to flip heads, and that's going to be a bit of a bummer. But this build is probably the best way to still play Goldengo because it just covers your worst matchups. But Dengo is still just a very powerful archetype. And then Jengo. Jengo's going to be pretty big. I think Jengo's still good. Goldengo underperformed this weekend at Monterey and Frankfurt, which I think is a big deal for the deck, and I think that definitely will open up some people's eyes overall to the deck. I think that the Jengo deck is very powerful. The Iron Hands definitely does have a lot of value right now in the meta. Pikachu, pretty good. Jengo, I think, I'm assuming it's a bit, it should be favored into Terra Box, because, I mean, ideally, you just put, like, a Joltik and an Iron Hands in play, and they can't Wellspring you. As long as you don't bench Gimme Ghouls, like, they can't Wellspring your Joltik and Gimme, take 2, you can, like, amp them for 3, and then kill a 1-prizer, and you can easily prize trade against them. You can just build a Pikachu in the Terra Box matchup if you want also. It's not a bad idea. And then, yeah, this deck seems pretty good still. I like Jengo. Still a strong deck. I definitely would recommend trying it out if you're somebody who wants to play Dengo this weekend. I think Jengo, I don't know what'll be more popular, like straight Dengo or Jengo. Jengo is a little bit more awkward because you're kind of compiling 2 decks together, but I wouldn't be surprised if Jengo was, fairly popular. Terra Box is a big one. So this one did just rebound in popularity and had a pretty good run this weekend at both regionals. I fully expect Terra Box to be a popular pick for Pittsburgh. I know people are like, oh, Shaman is going to see play now because Terra Box did so well. That probably will happen, but I still don't think it's going to be terrible. I mean, Terra Box does get crippled pretty bad by Shaman, but the deck is still pretty good. Not every deck is going to play Shaman. The only decks I expect Shaman to be in is maybe Gardevoir, maybe Dragapult. That's it. Every other deck, I don't really expect to have a Shaman in it. Like, Goldengo's probably not going to play Shaman. I don't expect them to play Shaman. Like, I don't think that many decks this weekend will be running Shaman, which is a good thing for this deck. But it really just kind of depends on, like, whether or not this actually ends up being the case. Because I think this deck is still pretty strong in our format. And you have a good Dengo matchup, which is huge. And, if you're not playing against Shaman, this deck farms. I don't know if there's any new technology this deck will play going into this weekend. Seems like this build is, like, pretty solid. Raging Bull will be popular. People like their Raging Bulls. I don't know if the deck is actually that good for this weekend, but Bolt is still fine. With Terra Box being on the rise, I don't expect Raging Bolt to be as popular as it would have been. I think Bolt was it was popular in Monterey and Frankfurt, but I don't expect Raging Bolt to be as popular. Terra Box and Guardy being on the rise, not a great thing for this deck. This deck doesn't really have a good matchup into either of those 2 decks, which is kind of bad. So I don't expect a lot of Raging Bolt this weekend to do that well. It's not a bad deck, but I don't know. It doesn't seem like the best tournament for it. I think its play rate will drop a little bit for sure. Joltik Box, another deck, like, I expect to do decent. Joltik Box seems like it's just in a very neutral position right now. Like it's a very neutral deck. Like, if you want to play a deck that's strong, cheeses wins, maybe even an easy deck to day 2 with, Joltik Box probably your best bet. I don't know if it's better than Jengo. Jengo does have a little bit more tricks with the Goldengo. You're a little bit more, not consistent, but you do have more going on with the Goldengo. You're a little bit more consistent at taking KOs when you want to take KOs, as opposed to Joltik Box, which is more of a pile. But again, it's a very neutrally good deck. I think Joltik Box is still good for this weekend. I'm assuming it's decent at Terra Box. I would assume the Terra Box matchup is actually pretty good, which is a good thing for this deck. Charizard is interesting. So Zard's just in this weird position where it's like a fine deck. I think it does still have that bad pull matchup. That's not great, but people do like their Charizard, popular Pokemon. I'm sure people will still play it, even if I think the deck is kind of mediocre for this weekend. I mean, you can play a Shaman in the deck, and then all of a sudden your Terra Box matchup should become pretty winnable. But even then, like, I don't know how good Charizard really is as a play. Like, if you're wanting to have, like, a deep run, like, you're going to hit a lot of Terra Box, and you're going to hit a lot of Dust Pull, like, matchups that are a little shaky. Dengo is obviously supposed to be favored. It's one of your better matchups, but they're all playing the Togekiss or even the Jengo variant, which I think is still kind of unfavored. I think Zard definitely is a little bit shakier for this weekend, but still like a decent deck overall. I don't expect Charizard's play rate to drop. I think people will probably cut Mist Energy out of the deck just to have a better deck. Like, you can probably just cut Mist for Tool Scrapper and call it a day. Like, that's probably, maybe even add a Shaman of the deck. I mean, I'm looking at the highest placing build here from Frankfurt, I think this was, or Monterey. I think realistically, if Charizard cuts Mist Energy because Devo's on the decline and cuts the Tatsugiri for a Shaman, you probably have a solid chance of having a Zard deck that can take down the rise of Terra Box and Guardy while still offsetting that Dengo matchup being good. And then you're obviously just going to have to accept that your pull matchup is atrocious. Pull Zard's interesting. It may top 8 at Monterey. I think it is slightly worse than normal Charizard, because you are taking a bit more of a hit into guard. Like, your guarding matchup is a bit more worse because you're not all in on the Charizard, and then obviously you don't have as good of a matchup in a Dengo as you would have because you're not as consistent at using your Chi-Yu. I just think this deck is overall very mediocre. I don't expect Pulsar to have a good showing. I think it's just mid. I think if I were to play Charizard, just play Pidgeysard. All right. Another deck that I think actually might catch a little bit of play is Grimmsnarl. This deck has been declining ever since Worlds, but it had some good performances this weekend, better than it did at Worlds. I think Dengo not being as good for this weekend was obviously good for the deck. This deck definitely does have a few weaknesses, though. It's not as good into Terra. Like, the Terra Box matchup, I think, is unfavored. Even with the Shaman, they still have Leaves, which can be a bit of a challenge to get over. But I do think Grimmsnarl is a decent play for Pittsburgh. I think if you're somebody who likes to play Grimmsnarl and you want to play to a regional, Pittsburgh is probably the best time to play it because we are seeing Guardy coming back. But Guardy is now not playing Fluttermane, Devo, or even the Jellicent, which I think gives you a better time. As long as there's no Devo in the deck, I think Guardy actually becomes a pretty good matchup. This deck should, in theory, beat the Henry Chow Guardy list if they're not playing Devo. So if, like, Guardy's starting to cut Devo, not a bad time to play Grimmsnarl. Also, like, you probably need to play Shaman again to beat Terra Box. Yeah, I think Grim is pretty good. I would probably just play Shaman and Maractus in the deck, and Budu, and call it a day. And I think you're pretty favored into a lot of the decks. I think Grimmsnarl is bound to have, like, a decent recovery of play, and I think this could be a decent weekend to play it, in my opinion. I don't think it'll be very popular, though. I don't think a lot of players are going to catch on to Grimmsnarl and realize it's actually not a bad deck for the tournament, or people are just not wanting to play the deck. It's not really a fun deck to play because of all the Frost Slash shenanigans. Like, it's not a very fun deck to play. But it is a very good deck. And I think it's probably, like, the best time to play Grim. Flareon's interesting. It's maybe just a worse Terra Box. But you do have advantages. You farm Goldengo completely. And then obviously you do have Sylveon, which does give you a little bit of agency in other matchups, like against Guardian Pulp. But, like, I feel like normal Terra Box just a better deck than Flareon. But Flareon's still kind of cool. I mean, people like their Flareons. I mean, it's a fine play. I don't think it'll be as popular as Terra Box, obviously. If my opponent flips over a Fan Rotom and they grab Hoot Hoots and an Eevee, I would expect it to be more of a Terra Box deck than an actual Flareon deck, because we did see a few Terra Boxes recently playing Leafeon and Flareon in it. Ho-Oh Armor Rouge is another interesting deck that I think in theory is, like, extremely powerful and good, but suffers from consistency issues, which holds it back. But I do think Ho-Oh Armor Rouge is a fine deck. There's people that think it's good and believe in it. I don't think it'll be popular, but I wouldn't be surprised if, once again, we saw, like, one make top 32. We've been seeing it make these top 32 runs recently, and I think the same thing can happen in Pittsburgh. Now, Enzork, unfortunately, has been declining for a while now. I don't think Enzork is going to do that good in Pittsburgh. I think the deck is actually still fine. Guardy being on the rise again is not a bad thing for the deck, but Zork feels mid against the Terra decks. Like, against Terra Box, you're pretty unfavored. Against Raging Bolt, you're unfavored. Like, you're unfavored against Terra decks, which is not ideal. The deck is still, like, strong overall, don't get me wrong. You're taking a good matchup at Guardy. I don't know how Zork needs to be built, though. We have the Cornerstone builds here from Worlds, and we have the Toadscruel Poison Package build from Worlds. I still think there's merit to playing Darmanitan right now. Darmanitan kind of gets caught in the crossfire, though, of, like, everyone starting to put Shaman in the deck as a panic option against Terra Box, which doesn't help Zork overall, but, I mean, Zork is still, like, a pretty solid deck. I don't know if it'll be popular. I don't think that many good players will play it. I think it'll still see a decent result. Like, I think Zork will probably do okay in Pittsburgh, probably better than it did in the last two regionals we just had, but I don't know how good Zork is for this weekend. Just the rise of these Terra Box decks just kind of scares me off of playing it. But I do think there's still the option to play the, the Darmanitan build, which, I mean, the Darmanitan build seems a little bit better in a Terra Box. And then we have the one prize stuff, Crustle, Typhlosion. I don't think these decks are, like, fantastic plays for the tournament, but they're decent, and they definitely cheese wins when they want to cheese wins. Crustle cheeses wins pretty easily. I think it should be Terra Box. I mean, Terra Box really only has, like, Fan Rotom. They don't really have a Shred Attack. Yeah, they're not playing the... I mean, if they have a Cornerstone, you just kill it with Crustle. Yeah, I think Crustle's, like, fine. I mean, Guardy's atrocious. Like, you lose to Guardy, but you beat everything else. Well, you should. I mean, you still lose to Dusknoir Dragon Ball, too. Typhlosion's not bad either. I think Typhlosion's still, like, a decent deck. But I think, honestly, if I was playing a one-price deck, I would probably just rather play Crustle, because you're most of the time guaranteed wins, where Typhlosion actually has to work to win the game still. Crustle, like, very easily just wins games on the spot. So, like, no one's respecting Crustle right now. Like, if I'm playing this weekend, if I'm playing a deck that could play a Crustle counter if I wanted to, and my deck loses to it, I'm not going to put it in just to be like, oh, I'm going to beat Crustle. Like, I mean, you're not beating a 1-2% deck. So, yeah, Crustle doesn't seem like the worst deck, but you're just losing to Pult and Guardy, but you can beat everything else almost. I think the deck that has best chance of winning the tournament is probably Guardy still. Like, I don't know. At this point, if you want to put stock in a deck to win a regional or a major tournament, you might as well just say it's going to be Gardevoir. Wouldn't be surprised if somebody did well with Guardy this weekend and made it to finals. Dusknoir Dragapult is another deck that I would be shocked to not see in the finals or in top 8. Goldengo, I think, is still, like, decent for this weekend. I think stuff like Terra Box is going to scare it off. I don't know how Goldengo is going to adapt to the format right now, but Dengo still seems like a pretty fine deck for this weekend. We'll have to see if Goldengo sees any play at all. Jengo is also pretty good. So I would expect at least 1 or 2 Goldengo to make top 8 this time around. And Terra Box might be able to squeak out another top 8 this weekend for sure. So let's talk about the meta percentages of where I think decks will land for this weekend. Starting off, we have Goldengo, which I think will be the most played deck, probably around like 13%. I know Dengo is like probably falling off right now. Like, not falling off, but it feels like Goldengo is in a worse spot than it was for Worlds. But people like Goldengo. Goldengo is fun to play. It's pretty easy to play. Like, it's not hard to win with Goldengo, but it's also easy to lose with Goldengo. That's the problem. But people like Goldengo. I wouldn't be surprised if it's like the most played deck in the room at like a 13 to 14% meta share. Dragapult in general will probably also be around the same, like 13%. It'll be at probably close between Dengo and Pult. Maybe Dragapult is the most played deck in the room, but I think Goldengo will be the most played deck in the room. People like Goldengo, man. Like, also, if you're combining Jengo with... Yeah, if you're combining both Goldengo variants, I mean, I would put Dengo at like a 14-15% meta share. If we're not counting Jengo. Jengo would probably be like a 4 or 5% meta share, where Goldengo itself would be more in that, like... Well, maybe it's a bit higher than if I'm combining the two. Combined Goldengo is like 15%. Dragapult will be close behind it by like maybe like 1%. I would expect Gardevoir to be around a 9 to 10% deck. I don't know, it's kind of hard to gauge Gardevoir's play rate, because like, it's such a good deck and it has the best chance of winning the tournament. All the top players will most likely be on it. Like, a lot of good players will be playing it, but not as many people like to play it as you'd think. So I don't, like a 10% maybe. I mean, bro, it just won 2 regionals. Like, how is this deck not played more? 10% will go for Guardy. It's always been a bit lower than it really should be, though. What else? We got Terra Box. I would honestly give it like an 8 to 9%. Yeah. I mean, it's a pretty decent time to play Terra Box. Again, Shaman scares in the air, but Terra Box being about a 9%er definitely seems right to me. I would also play like, or put like Joltik Box in like 7%. Joltik Box, 7% seems pretty accurate. Jengo, I would, once again, I mean, I guess if we're saying like Goldengo itself, maybe a 13-14% deck, and then I guess Jengo would probably be in like that 4% range. It would be a bit lower than Joltik Box. I think more people are attracted to Joltik Box than Jengo. Raging Bolt would probably also be 7 to 6%. People like Raging Bolt. I don't think the deck is that great for this weekend, but people do like it. I would also give Charizard probably like a 6%er. Zard is fine. It's not a terrible play for the weekend. Grimmsnarls and like another deck I would be like, Grim would be like maybe like a 3% deck. Then like Zork would be like 2%, Typhlosion 2%, and like there's no Crustle on here, but I would also give Crustle 2% of the meta share. I know that's not completely 100% of the meta, but this is probably what the meta share will most likely look like. Maybe pardon me, maybe Dengo's a bit higher, like 16%, and I'd up Dragapult up to like a 14-15%er. That's probably about accurate. I mean, people like Dragapult, people like Goldengo. Those are most likely going to be the 2 most played decks in the room. Guardy will be probably close behind it. And I think Terra Box's play rate will shoot up to around that 9%. I don't know if it'll get double digits, but I think Terra Box will be pretty heavily played this weekend. Raging Bolt and Joltik Box, probably in that same percentage. Charizard maybe just below it, and then that's kind of like, that's where I would place the meta going into the Pittsburgh Regional Championships. Let me know what you think of the meta down below. What do you think is going to do well this weekend? Do you think there's going to be any more new surprises coming out of the format? Do you think we're going to see any crazy things happen? Any new decks pop up? Any new technologies? Let me know all that in the comment section below. Hope you enjoyed the video. Catch you on another one very soon. Subscribe if you're new to the channel, and I'll see y'all soon. Bye-bye.